think this is an incredibly exciting period for the history of Windsor and its relationship to Detroit. We live in a period of increasing complexity in terms of transnational networks and transnational urbanism. We live in a period in which borders are becoming increasingly complex, especially the environments in which borders are located. And we live in a period in which cities are taking on an ever more prominent role worldwide as urban populations increase. And I think that Windsor is in fact uniquely positioned to engage with all of those issues at the same time. One of the tendencies in border studies, I think, has been often to think in terms of a kind of binary relationship of experience, that we are either here or there, or we are thinking about the movement of goods and people from one spot to another. In many ways, the question isn't so much about a kind of translation between two different environments, but an issue around circulation. People's goods, ideas, currencies are moving in an ever more increasingly complex network of circulation. As those ideas touch down in different places, as those things move between environment to environment or culture to culture, they become slightly different, and we have to take into account those differences as we think about the movement of peoples around transnational networks. But as some scholars would argue, networks always have local connotations. Networks always have nodes on them that engage a local community. And so we can think of ourselves as one node on that ever more complex network of cities around the world. Detroit, of course, is facing a series of changes that are unprecedented in the United States. And so that makes our location right next to Detroit incredibly exciting. Questions of urban sustainability, questions of the future of urban populations. These are real world issues that Windsor is uniquely positioned to engage with. Sometimes I think in the Canadian context we think of ourselves as outsiders, but I think what we need to rethink is Windsor's position as part of an integrated urban environment that includes Detroit and happens to have a border in the middle of it. One thing that I'm reminded of when thinking about border cultures is the communications scholar Marshall McLuhan, who a lot of people will know by name, who was famously here in Windsor in the 1940s. And McLuhan always argued that borderlines are complex spaces. They're not so much points of division as points of resonance between many different communities whose frictions come together in one place. And I think we can use that as a productive idea for how to position ourselves in Windsor in relationship to cities around the world. The kind of research that we're doing here in the School of Creative Arts, we deal with cultural issues, and we're in a unique position to think about the impact that all of those other issues have on how we experience our daily lives in these kinds of places. And this is not just a matter for artists, but for creative thinkers across the university to engage with different strategies of representation and to understand that how we represent these kinds of issues to each other is not some kind of secondary occurrence, but rather is in fact constitutive of the very ways in which we live our lives.